All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Imagine a space with absolutely no walls, no floor, just this infinite, unending void. And right smack in the center of all that nothingness stands a table. It's simple, it's clean, and it's totally solid. But it completely defies our basic understanding of reality because it doesn't reflect light, but it doesn't absorb it either. It just exists. Today, we're going to unpack a fascinating thought experiment from our source material, where a very specific sequence of tests is applied to this table, tests that break literally every known law of physics, all to uncover a profoundly beautiful metaphor.
So you have to ask yourself, what does unbreakable actually mean? It's kind of a hard concept for our brains to wrap around, right? Because everything in our daily, everyday experience is fundamentally fragile. Every single object we know will eventually break. Every structure we build is going to fail. I mean, we are all intimately familiar with that slow-motion tragedy of a dropping phone and a splintering screen, the sudden shattering of glass, or even the groaning and bending of heavy steel. Our reality is completely defined by its limits. But this thought experiment poses a beautifully simple question. What if just one thing simply didn't break? What if we actually encountered an object entirely free from the burden of failure?
Okay, part one, the physical tests. Let's look at the visceral trials we intuitively understand. We kick things off with a rapid escalation of sheer destruction. Test one is weight. A feather drops, then bricks, then a massive car engine. Absolutely zero compression. Test two is impact. A massive heavy metal sphere drops from above, causing this giant shockwave. A hammer literally shatters against the surface, no damage. Test 3, heat. The whole environment is engulfed in a raging inferno. The materials all around it melt, warp, and just violently collapse. But the table? No expansion at all. And finally, test 4 is pressure. It's plunged into these crushing, dark underwater depths where huge metal structures are imploding left and right. The table yields zero deformation. Despite that complete cacophony of shattering metal, crushing depths, and melting environments, there is this stark, almost eerie contrast. The table stands, completely unchanged. It is entirely unmoved by the violent failures of the physical world around it. Moving on to part two, surviving the march of time. So we've seen it survive immediate, catastrophic violence. But test 5 accelerates decay to an unbelievable degree. We're talking years turning into decades, decades into centuries. Rust spreads like a virus. Organic material completely decomposes. Dust forms, settles thickly, and then eventually just disappears into nothingness as time marches on. Everything around this table is returning to nothingness. Yet totally defying the fundamental entropy of the universe, the table doesn't age a single second. It remains exactly as it was on day one. So, if literally nothing physical can break it, what on earth can you place on it? This right here is the major paradigm shift of this entire explainer. We are officially pivoting away from literal physical destruction. Because if physical limits don't exist here, well, we have to search for those limits somewhere else.
Look, physical things are easy, right? We know their limits. Weight, impact, heat, pressure, time. Even a ticking watch or a heavy book has a strictly defined mass. But what about the unmeasurable stuff? Ideas, human presence, emotion, information. What happens when we take things that carry absolutely no physical mass, but hold this immense, crushing weight in our daily lives, and we place them on the table?
Which brings us to part 3, testing the unmeasurable. Test 6 begins with ideas. Out of the void, a glowing sphere appears. It's a pure, completely intangible concept. It flickers for a second as it's placed on the table, and then it just stabilizes. And then more follow. Really bold concepts, intricate designs, massive, expansive visions. We are burdening this structure not with physical mass, but with the sprawling, heavy weight of human imagination and thought. And none of these ideas collapse. None of these visions disappear into the void. The table holds them. It effortlessly supports the boundless weight of the conceptual. Then, test 7 introduces human presence. A figure hesitates before placing their hand on the table. Now, physically, nothing happens, but fundamentally, everything changes. They place something completely invisible onto the surface. The air itself distorts slightly, signaling the addition of something way beyond our standard vision. Pure emotion. Suddenly, we're seeing the absolute heaviest things we carry as human beings. Fear, hope, ambition, a photograph holding a frozen memory, the devastating void of loss.
the spark of creation. I mean, think about how heavy these things feel to us in reality. They can feel absolutely crushing. Yet, every single one is placed on the table, and every single one is held. It brings us to this profound realization. Not everything is physical. Emotional weight is very, very real, and it is heavy. But what happens when you place the unmeasurable on something that just cannot fail? The table accepts this invisible burden with the exact same calm stability it showed when a car engine was dropped on it. Which brings us to test 8, information. A digital interface pops up. Endless streams of raw data, complex structures, shifting numbers, and massive algorithms literally pour down onto the table. We live in an era where massive systems crash and hard drives corrupt just under the sheer volume of data we produce, right? But as these endless digital systems dump onto the table, they do not overload it. They don't corrupt it at all. There are simply no limits, no thresholds whatsoever. The table's capacity for holding complex information, just like its capacity for raw emotion and physical mass, is genuinely infinite.
And finally, part 4, the true meaning, the ultimate test.
So the final test is initiated. We need to see what happens when it faces everything the universe has to offer, all at once. Everything hits at the exact same moment. The crushing physical weight, the melting heat, the imploding pressure, and the infinite stretch of time. And simultaneously, the endless streams of data, the crushing weight of emotion, the heaviness of memory, and the entire expanse of human thought. Every single physical and emotional force crashing down in unison. The result? The table stands, flawlessly unchanged.
This is not about the table. It's about what you choose to put on it. That right there is the philosophical metaphor hidden at the core of this whole experiment. The unbreakable table is just a canvas, you see. It represents an infinite capacity. Maybe it's our own internal resilience, or the enduring nature of human legacy. It shows us that the vessel itself will never break, which shifts the focus entirely onto the cargo.
So we return to the empty table, just waiting in the void. We've seen that it can hold the heaviest physical objects, the destructive march of time, the entirety of human emotion, and infinite streams of data. The table is going to hold whatever you decide to carry. The limits aren't out there. They are entirely defined by what we choose to bring to the surface. So I leave you with this. What will you place on it?